All right, so let's get started with the design. The first thing that I want to cover is a very fundamental concept of responsiveness. Essentially, there's a few different screen sizes you need to worry about when you're doing this type of, like breaking down a design and then writing the code for it. So we need to think about responsiveness or like auto resizing, essentially, or scaling of our design is a good way to think about it. So there's basically like three screen sizes that are primarily used for desktop these days. The most used is probably a 1080p screen, which is like 1920 by 1080. Then you have like your 2K screen, which is like a 2400 by something or another. And then you have 4K screens, which are like 3800 something by 2400 or something like that. They're like 2400p or something. I forget exactly, but just if you know the idea of 1080p, 2K, 4K. So for example, I'm running a 4K monitor and my display is 3840 by 2160. Okay. I made this design specifically at 4K because that's probably the upper limit on what you actually have to worry about when you're doing web development these days. There are screens that go higher than 4K resolution. Apple has some 5K monitors. There are 8K monitors out there, but those are so super niche right now that they're not really something that you would worry about all that much. So in order to get this kind of scaling that we want, CSS has this feature called rem and also em. So up here, I have nicocalc.com open. And this is the site that I use. And it's a pixel to rem converter. So we're not going to be working in straight pixels most of the time. We're going to be working in rems. And rem is essentially a scaling factor, okay? So you see right down here right here we have calculation based on root font size of 16 pixels. So 16 pixels is a pretty standard root font size for something at 1080p. So what this means is if we have a root font size of 16 pixels, 1 rem equals 16 pixels. 2 rem equals 32 pixels. 3 rems equals 48. You see, it's just essentially a scale factor. 3 times 16 is 48. 2 times 16 is 32. 1.5 times 16 is 24. This is exactly how you think about it. So we're essentially, rather than using pixels, we're essentially using scaling units based on whatever our root font size is. And when we specify something in rem, it's always going to use this root font size. Now, so 16 is good for 1080p, but for a 4K monitor has, essentially, if you had a square, like a 10 pixel by 10 pixel square on a 1080p monitor, and you wanted it to be the exact same size on a 4K monitor, it'd have to double in size. It would have to be 20 by 20 in order to take up the same physical space, assuming the two monitors have the exact same pixel density, whatever. So if we're going to be working on this design, and let's say we have a font size of, I'm just going to unlock this real quick and then go in here. Let's say I'm getting a font size of 91.7 pixels. Now this pixel unit is based on a 4K design. So if we wanted to convert it to rem, we need to be using 32 pixels as our base, right? And then we could just put in like 92 pixels here. And this is how many rems it is. And so basically the way this works is in CSS, we can essentially set up a simple scale factor. So we can use 16 pixels as a base for 1080p, and then 24 pixels for 2K, and 32 pixels for 4K. And so by using rems, everything just automatically rescales based on the display size of the desktop user. And this is pretty simple to write. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this body.scss. And yes, I want to add that to get. And I'm just going to paste some code here instead of writing it from scratch, because this is actually the second time I'm actually recording this. So basically what this means, it means we're targeting the HTML and the body tags. So if you open up your index.html, we have HTML tag, which wraps literally everything inside of your document. And then we have a body tag. This is where your content goes, is inside the body tag. And as we come down here, we see we have media queries. And media queries is just a way for you to do things like kind of what it looks like. You can write @media, and then we can specify, we can say the maximum width of our screen is 1920. So 1920 by 1080 is the typical resolution of a 1080p screen. And we can say we want our font size to be 16 pixels. Then if we go up to the 2K screen, so they have max width, the width of those screens is normally 2560 pixels. We can say we want our base font size to be 24 pixels. And for a 4K screen, the width is 3840. And then we can say we want the font size to be 32 pixels. And so this will dynamically change our base HTML document font size automatically based on what the user is already using. So this allows us to solve a lot of scaling problems super simply already. And this is just how you do it. It should be pretty straightforward by now. I don't think that I have that much extra to say here, but if we just want to go through the other CSS here, we're just saying that we want our default background color. So there's two different ways you can set a background color. You can use background, and we can set a color. We'll talk more about colors later, but here we're saying we just want a background color of white. We want to set our default font family to Open Sans. We're going to get into fonts coming up here. And we want the font weight to be 400, which is a regular font. And then we want our font color to be black, which is 000. Again, we'll go over more colors later. You don't need to worry about that right now. I just wanted to explain the code while we're here. And so, yeah, so most of the time when we're taking measurements out of this design document, you're going to see me come in here and I'm going to set this to 32 pixels. So if you're going to follow along while we're working out of the document, change that as we continue to move on. So at the bottom of this page, it talks about rems and it talks about EMs. So there's two different scaling factors you can use. Our rems work on the base document font size. And then there's EMs, which you can use on like an element. So you can change the font size at an element level and then use that as a scale factor. Now, I basically never do that. It's super duper rare. 99% of the time, you're just going to use rem. And I mean, honestly, almost 100% of the time you can use rem. So that's all you really need to know. As we go through everything, it's going to make a lot more sense. Maybe if you're a little confused right now. But you'll see that it's not really that big of a deal. All right, let's get on with it.